Day 12 of my writer's journey, and I have added some more layers to the motivations of the bad guys, the evil mages. So initially, my idea was the evil mages want to rob the stories, the magical stories, from their hope. Uh, the philosophy there, or the ideology, is we want to give people agency if they continue to believe in fairy tales. They will never take charge themselves. It's kind of the magical equivalent of, or the fantasy equivalent of these very pronounced atheists that always spend time trying to convince other people that if you go to church, if you believe, if you read the Bible, you believe in fairy tales, and come on, it's now or never. It's about this life, not about some imaginary future heaven life, etc. And so on the surface, it's going to sound like that. And a lot of the young evil mages, so for instance, Furtivus, our main antagonist, he believes that. He believes that that is a good cause. We should liberate people from this superstition of these stupid stories. No, stories are in itself not necessarily something you need to suppress, but you need to change the nature of the stories. And in fact, he believes that the more you scare people in the stories, the more that will teach them to take action. It's like nightmares are actually good for you because they make you want to fight, and that is what makes you stronger. So it's this whole ideology that is presented to these young guys like Fortivus, and maybe also girls, and they believe that they're on a good cause. This is how they're going to help save the world, by making them stronger. But then I thought, that's a little bit too black and white. Wouldn't it be much more interesting if behind that facade of ideology, there's actually a much more pragmatic reason for these evil mages to do what they do? And then I was thinking, what do we see in the real world all the time when it comes to trying to control the narrative, trying to control the media? Why would you want that? Why do people try to suppress the voice of religion and look down on fantasy writers and people that love science fiction and Star Wars? It's often because they don't like it when people consume stories that they don't control. What they are looking for is to control the narrative, to determine, to influence what we believe and what we dream of. And they don't want us to have these lofty ideals. I learned this when I was in China. You may know that I have Chinese roots. And so I went there a number of years ago, and what I saw was, on the one hand, a flourishing Catholic Christian community, and on the other hand, a government that was so scared of these Christians, not because they were powerful, but because the stories that they believed were stories about taking care of one another, of a society where there are ideals that drive people, and the government, the party, wants to have control over people's ideology and people's beliefs and people's hopes. And they don't like a foreign entity because they see the Catholic Church as something they have no control over. They see that as a threat. So what if in my story there is a similar reasoning of the people that are really in charge? And what if what they truly want is control, power, and what else is new? Money. They want to exploit the fear of the people. And so what they're actually doing is they're using this younger generation of very ideologically easy to manipulate young people, like Furtivus, like Elara, and they play with their needs and wants and promise them a solution to their deepest desires. But ultimately, they are being used for much more kind of mundane purposes. Namely, these evil mages want power, control, and they want to make money. And how do they do this? If they can manage to infiltrate all the stories that have happy endings, that have hope, then and they can subvert these stories into nightmares where people are afraid. People start to see anyone as a potential enemy and as a threat. It's like when you wake up from a nightmare, like the first thing you're like, you look around and because you still feel that fear. Well, that's kind of what these evil mages are trying to accomplish, that people are constantly living in fear. And what do? When you are in fear? You are looking for strong leaders. And so what they hope is that the people will actually voluntarily submit to the power of these evil mages, put them in key positions where they have even more power and more influence in broad daylight this time. So they will have pawns that they send to occupy important positions in society. And if people are afraid, they want to be strong. They want to buy weapons and armor and whatnot. So what if these evil mages actually are literally making money by selling people weapons or magic potions or some kind of replacement thing that will provide people with the illusion of being safe, but ultimately what they are constantly doing is destabilizing the society so that people become more and more dependent on their power and their solutions. Then the story becomes all of a sudden, more relevant to the world in which we are living and the kind of what we are looking for in stories. So it's a kind of the meta story here is I want to help people think about the world in which they live now by looking at it from a different perspective in the fantasy story that I'm writing. It's not unlike, any type of science fiction or fantasy story. George Lucas, when he made Star Wars, it was a very political movie. Nowadays, everybody has forgotten about that. But he wanted to make a statement, and he wanted to show what are the consequences of this hunger for power and this like how do you say that, like power without a conscience, without ideals. And that's why you have light side and dark side, and you have the empire and you have the rebels. Anyway, um, and then I was thinking, if at one point Fortivus is going to discover this, and it's going to completely pull the rug out of his under him. And so his allegiance to the mages, once he discovers that actually what they're really looking for is power, and they're using these young apprentices to accomplish this, he rebels, and then that sets up a very interesting possibility for the character of Fortivus. Once he joins our friends, he wants to liberate the other young mages. He actually goes to war to his former masters. That could be material for an entire new story, for another book, maybe even, like this civil war among the evil mages. And so then you could spin a story where he is going to try to infiltrate, like to go back and see if he can destabilize. What if these, like the rulers of the evil mages, what if they are really hard to reach because they're hiding maybe in fortresses or in castles, and Fortivus and Tim and Alara have to figure out how to take them out one by one. So it's kind of the opposite of what happens in my first book, where the evil mages are taking out all these story mages until they're all dead, and then Alara and Tim have to become the new story mages, the new generation. And what if the second book is the opposite, and Elara and Fortivus and Tim are trying to take out all these dangerous rulers one by one? And then I was like, well, where are they hiding? Well, what if they're hiding inside the stories? That would be so amazing. Um, but maybe that's overcomplicating the whole thing. But it's so funny that now that I'm writing, and maybe some more experienced writers will say, "Oh, Father Roderick, slow down, take it easy. Let's first write that first novel before you start this series of 10 novels." There will be time for that, but I'm still writing down these ideas. Maybe I won't do anything with it, and I definitely want the book to stand be a standalone experience if necessary. But I don't think it's a bad idea to already start thinking, well, what if there is a sequel to this book? Anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you. In tomorrow's update, I will share with you another idea. And I'm running out of time now, and it's about the animals. Remember the cat, who is the only creature who's not influenced by the story spell? That gave me an amazing idea, and I think it blew my mind. And I am so excited. That's what I'm going to write tomorrow, is the whole backstory about animals and their role in the story. Because this story is going to have puppies, and not just regular puppies, but fantastic puppies. More to come. Stay tuned, follow, and thank you so much for your feedback. Take care.